afternoon. I'm Wesley Couch, principal at Northwood Middle School, your host this evening. And on behalf of Dr. Wendy Robinson, Assistant Superintendent Chris Hissong, welcome to the 2017 Middle School Speech Contest. This would be an appropriate time to silence our electronic devices, which I know we are all carrying. And also, if you have any distractions, you think you might, this would be a great time to put those away. But I'm going to turn these activities over to Tara Kristen, Northwood Middle School language arts teacher and host for the activities this evening. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the 2017 Middle School Speech Contest. My name is Tara Kristen, and this is my 10th year teaching and coaching speech for FWCS. This is my 6th year as the middle school speech coordinator for the district, and I'm excited to hear what we have this year. Congratulations to all these talented students behind me who have made it this far, and good luck today. To start with, I'd like to introduce our fantastic panel of judges behind you. First off is Natalie Brewer. She is the curriculum director for Fort Wayne Community Schools. She's in her 20th year with FWCS. Previously, she was the curriculum coordinator for English Language Arts. Her teaching experience includes working at Haley, Abbott, and Weiser Park. She's a graduate of Northrop High School, Indiana University Bloomington, and IPFW, and is passionate about family, literacy, and travel. Please welcome Natalie Brewer. Next, we have Felicia Johnson. She is a graduate of Indiana University and teaches social studies at Northside High School. She's been teaching for approximately 12 years. She joined Northside's speech and debate team in 2015. She has a strong passion for what she does, and that is preparing our students for the 21st century expectations. Please welcome Felicia Johnson. Our final judge is Jaren Hudson. Jaren Hudson is the Director of Student Retention and Diversity Programming at the University of St. Francis. He has served in this role for the past 4 years and has been in higher education for the past 11. He also teaches a public speaking course in Communications Department as an adjunct faculty member. Jaren is a graduate of Taylor University and Indiana Wesleyan University and is a product of FWCS, graduating from Snyder High School in 2001. Please welcome Jaren Hudson. And finally, our MC for today is Cookie Rutledge. She has worked at FWCS for 27 years and has been an assistant speech coach for 10 years. She has been a district instructional coach for the past 5 years and admits to being intimidated as she graciously steps in for the first time as MC, played at world-class level by Dr. Betty Stein for the last 40 years. Please give a warm welcome to our new MC, Mrs. Cookie Rutledge.
Thank you, Tara, for all of your hard work. For more than 40 years, the person most readily identified with this contest is the beautiful Mrs. Betty Stein. As our MC for all of this time, she added the grace and dignity that we've all come to expect when we arrive for this event. Unfortunately, Mrs. Stein has decided to step aside this year. So, Mrs. Stein, I am neither your substitute nor your replacement. You are incomparable and irreplaceable. You are unequaled and unrivaled, a precious and rare gem and jewel to all of us. Next year, Betty, we look forward to seeing you in this designated spot at this contest, making sure that everything goes well. Audience, let's give Mrs. Stein an applause for all of her 40 years of service. Today you will hear from some of the best and brightest middle school students as they engage our thinking about issues that are meaningful to us as citizens. As your MC, I need to remind you once again to turn off your cell phones. Please refrain from applauding until the end of each speech. I know you're watching your baby up here make some great arguments, but please wait till the end of the speech. And please do not disturb in any way. I know you will be an excellent audience, so let's begin. Our first speaker today has selected the topic, should juveniles be tried as adults?
In May of 2014, 2 girls aged 12 years old were made responsible for leading another classmate into the woods and stabbing her nearly to death. The 2 girls will be tried as adults and face attempted murder, 65 years in adult prison, their childhood taken away from them. Is it fair that these 2 girls are being tried as adults? Juveniles who commit violent crime should not be tried as adults. Their brains are not fully developed and could have undiagnosed mental illnesses. Juveniles are not adults, and adult facilities are not safe, and juveniles have a much greater chance of reoffending. To begin, juveniles who commit violent crime should not be tried as adults. Their brains are not fully developed and could have undiagnosed mental illnesses. Dr. Griso of the Massachusetts Medical School stated, "There is no doubt that the prevalence of mental illness is much greater among juvenile offenders, especially those that involve difficulties in emotion regulation or impulse control. Juveniles could have a mental illness that affects their decision-making process. Brain development plays a big role in juvenile crimes," explains Justice Anthony Kennedy. The most recent research on the adolescent brain, which indicates the juvenile brain is still maturing in teen years well into the mid-20s. Juveniles' brains are still maturing, and the thought process is much different than adults. So no, a child's mental abilities are not fully developed, therefore they should not be tried as an adult. Under this important circumstance, juveniles are not adults. The legal adult age is 18 years of age. CNN made a statement saying, "The fact remains that juveniles are not adults. They are not adults, and their brains do not work the same as an adult. Just ask any parent. How is it that juveniles are not considered adults when it comes to purchasing alcohol, voting, getting married, or serving in a jury? Juveniles are not adults and cannot make the same decisions that adults do. As said and included, juveniles are children, not adults. Therefore, they should not be tried as an adult. Most importantly, juveniles who commit violent crimes should not be tried as adults. Adult facilities are not safe, and juveniles have a much greater chance of reoffending. As stated by SouthernPovertyLawCenter.org, research has shown that juveniles in the adult facilities are 34% more likely to be arrested again than those convicted of similar offenses in the adult court. The suicide rates also go up for those in adult facilities. The suicide and sexual abuse rate of juveniles in adult facilities are much higher. On the other hand, one might argue that when a juvenile commits a violent crime, they understand it comes with extreme consequences. Additionally, the person or people hurt by the crime push for the juvenile to be put up, locked away, and scared straight. This method is wrong and ineffective. As mentioned previously, juveniles who spend time in adult facilities are not safe and establish negative behaviors, which leads to a greater chance of reoffending. Instead, the United States should rehabilitate them, send them to therapy groups, and get them the help that they need, instead of locking them up with adult rapists and murderers. To conclude, juveniles who commit violent crimes should not be tried as adults. Their brains are not fully developed and could have undiagnosed mental illnesses. Juveniles are not adults, and adult facilities are not safe, and they have a much greater chance of reoffending. As stated by prison reformer Elizabeth Fry, punishment is not for revenge, but to lessen the crime and reform the criminal. Thank you.
What an interesting point of view. I love it. So our judges are seated at the back, and their responsibility today is a very difficult one. They are to listen to these speeches and try to determine which speech they think is the best. I think that all 10 of them are super good. Would you join me, please, in applauding all of our students? So 40 years ago, this contest looked very different. The middle school language arts teachers would hold individual contests in their classrooms, select a winner from each classroom, then hold a championship round in the school cafeteria. Now, Mrs. Stein, being the wonderful person that she is, talked with the teachers from the various schools and asked if they didn't feel that their students deserved a better forum. When they agreed, Mrs. Stein phoned Pat Anthus. For those of you who don't know, Mrs. Anthus was the wife of Dr. Bill Anthus, who was then superintendent of Fort Wayne Community Schools. Within days of this conversation, Mrs. Stein received a phone call from the superintendent's office. The result? The citywide middle school contest would be held in the boardroom. The other positive, of course, is that these hardworking young people would be given the honor that they deserve. Now, Mrs. Stein told me today that when she started 40 years ago, that the big issue was abortion. She said, Cookie, I heard so many abortion speeches. She said that I could have gotten up and just given one myself. I think as you look in your folder today, you're seeing that the issues have changed with the times, and that our students are bold enough, courageous enough to really look at these and come up with great arguments. So I think now that my judges are looking at me, means that we're ready for our second contestant, who will speak with us on the subject of waterboarding.
You start with the threat of imminent death. Helplessness is magnified by pain, terror, and humiliation. In my case, naked, I was forced to dig my own grave while being pelted with descriptions of the excruciating pain I would endure and the slow death I would experience. Such preliminary mental torture tactics rob a human being of his dignity and his ability to withstand physical humiliation and pain. Remy Malek, an Armenian war veteran who withstood waterboarding. It is easy to say you would like to bring back waterboarding when you yourself have never endured it. It is easy to say you would like to reinstate this form of violence when you have never had a rag placed over your face and doused in water, causing you to feel as if you're drowning. Waterboarding should be illegal because it is torture, it is unconstitutional, and it is ineffective. First, waterboarding is torture. If you follow any sort of news, you may be aware that many politicians believe that waterboarding does not constitute torture. However, it does. The Geneva Convention states that torture means any act by which severe pain or suffering, whether physical or mental, is intentionally inflicted on a person for such purposes as obtaining from him or a third person information or a confession. Interrogation is used to extract information from a certain source, and waterboarding is used as an enhanced interrogation technique. Also, waterboarding can cause various types of injury, therefore enabling it to be classified as torture under the Geneva Conventions. Not only is waterboarding torture, it is also unconstitutional. The 8th Amendment of the United States Constitution prohibits the federal government from cruel and unusual punishment. Waterboarding causes the detainee to feel as if they are drowning. It also has the potential to be lethal. If someone does not drown from the physical act of waterboarding, they are still able to dry drown. Dry drowning is when a person's lungs become unable to extract oxygen from the air due to that person being exposed to copious amounts of some sort of liquid, and then said liquid being abruptly extracted, which in most cases is waterboarding. Because dry drowning and actually drowning someone are both forms of murder, waterboarding is unconstitutional under the 8th Amendment. On the other hand, supporters of waterboarding may believe that since it is used as interrogation, it can help organizations such as the CIA who uses it gain important information. However, waterboarding is ineffective. According to Newsweek, because a person being tortured loses the ability to distinguish between true and false memories, otherwise known as confabulation, further pain and stress does not cause him to tell the truth, but to retreat further into a fog where he cannot tell true from false. What this means is that when someone is put under increased stress, such as waterboarding, they are more likely to lie than to give useful information. Also, if you are being tortured, wouldn't you lie or say whatever the torturer wanted to hear just to stop the endless pain? In conclusion, waterboarding is torture, is unconstitutional, and is ineffective. The Geneva Convention legally defines waterboarding as torture. Under the 8th Amendment, waterboarding is unconstitutional. Lastly, due to confabulation, waterboarding is ineffective. Instead of resulting to any type of torture, we, as Americans, could use a different, rather kinder approach. Studies show that a comfortable setting for an interrogation would make it more likely that the interrogee would disclose sought-for information. Waterboarding should be abolished, and it should not be brought back, whether it be by our president or not. Ladies and gentlemen, America is at our best when our actions match our values. Hillary Clinton.
see why we call them some of our brightest and best. And I think we're looking at some future politicians here too, don't you think so? So while I was surfing the web looking for information on public speaking, of course I came across the same statistic that everyone knows, that the greatest fear of mankind is public speaking. The second greatest fear is death. So I was looking at some of the testimonials. There's a website that helps you with public speaking. You know, for some people it just comes naturally. For others of us, we have to work at it. But I thought these interviews were really very interesting. One of the interviews was called An Interview with a Patient Who Has Resolved Her Public Speaking Anxiety by Overeating. Okay. Another one was a testimonial from a pharmaceutical rep who has resolved his public speaking phobia without medication. Pharmaceutical, okay, all right, okay. And then a 7-minute testimonial, which I found fascinating. I listened to it 3 times. A woman who said, "I'd rather be in chemotherapy than speak in front of a group." So we see today, yeah, well, that's exactly my response. So we see today that these young people are more courageous than a majority of the people in the world, and probably more courageous than some of us who are in this room. My favorite testimonial was the CEO of, they say, a multi-billion-dollar corporation who said, "Whenever I have to speak in front of people, I sweat profusely, my face turns red, and I want to run out of the room. But then I remember that my shareholders are there." So, we can't run out of the room, and none of our contestants are willing to do that today or wanting to do that today. Let's welcome our third contestant, who will speak on softball is more challenging than baseball.
As a softball player of 8 years and a softball catcher of 6 years, one of my pet peeves is when people say that softball and baseball are the same thing. Well, they're not. So this is all about why I think softball is more challenging than baseball. The definition of softball, according to Google, is a game that is similar to baseball, but is played on a smaller field with a ball that is larger and heavier than a baseball, and that ball is pitched underhand. So the things that make softball more challenging than baseball is that pitching and batting are harder, running and playing catcher are harder, and fielding the ball is much harder. One reason that makes softball more challenging than baseball is that pitching and batting are harder in softball than they are in baseball. First, the softball pitching mound is closer to home plate than it is in baseball. A softball pitcher can pitch up to 70 miles per hour as compared to a baseball pitcher who can pitch up to 100 miles per hour. That is 30 miles per hour faster, but if you think about how the pitching mound is closer to home plate in softball, a softball hitter actually has less time to decide whether to hit or take the ball and then swing. A softball hitter has on average 25 milliseconds to react to a strike. That is 55% less time than a baseball hitter has. Second, a professional baseball and softball instructor of 21 years named Tony Scoligo said in an email that the biggest difference between softball and baseball is one pitch, the rise ball. That's a pitch in which the ball has a backspin and rises as it gets closer to the batter. That one pitch, the rise ball, makes a softball harder to hit. The second reason that makes softball more challenging than baseball is that running and playing the position of catcher is harder in softball than it is in baseball. First, getting to first base, a softball runner only has 3.3 seconds to get there before they'll get out. That is 1.1 seconds faster than the typical Major League Baseball player can get to first base, according to a sports science video ESPN made. Second, a quick runner can get to second base in less than 3 seconds, even with rules against leading off. So, girl, playing the position of catcher in softball has to throw about 1/10 of a second faster than the typical Major League catcher would. The final reason that makes softball more challenging than baseball is that fielding the ball and getting the runner out is much harder in softball than it is in baseball. First, the softball infield is about 7,200 feet in area versus a baseball infield, which is 16,700 feet in area. So with an infield less than half the size of that of a baseball's, a softball infielder has to react much faster. Did you know that in softball, when hits come off the bat at 100 miles per hour, that a shortstop has less time to react and catch it than a tennis player has reacting to a Serena Williams serve, and her average serve is 118.3 miles per hour. On a slap hit, an infield has even less time to react because the batter stands in the left batter's box and runs towards the ball while hitting it. In scientific terms, she gets rid of her resting inertia before even starting to first base. She can get there in as little as 2.66 seconds. According to this, a third baseman fielding a slap hit can take no longer than 1.5 seconds to get the ball and get ready to throw to first. In conclusion, softball is way more challenging than baseball. It's more challenging than baseball because pitching and batting are harder, running and playing the position of catcher are harder, and fielding the ball and getting the runner are much harder in softball. You may hear people say baseball is harder and tougher because it's a man's game, but men play softball too, like in work tournaments some jobs have. And think about this. If you get hit with a softball, it's just going to leave a bigger bruise. Thank you.
So let's talk about commitment to the process. These young people arrived here today after a long journey. Although each school in Fort Wayne community has its own rules for speech contestants, let me tell you about one of these schools. In this particular school, each 7th and 8th grade student must write an argumentative speech. Each 7th and 8th grade student must deliver his or her speech in front of peers in the classroom. Not without tears, sometimes not without throwing up. Then there are 2 student winners who will be selected from each classroom. The 7th grade winners then compete against all the other 7th grades, and then the 8th grade winners do the same. Next, there is an all-school competition, and the top 6 students from 7th grade and the top 6 students from 8th grade compete for 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place. The first place winner of that school's competition becomes the school's representative at the city-wide contest. Now, however your school decided on a winner, this is what happens once they arrive here. There are very specific rules, and the judges are looking at these today. The judges are judging each student on how well they present the speech, how well they are poised. Can they stand in front of you and maintain some eye contact, or are they looking down and acting timid? The next thing is the evaluation of the speech itself. Does it make sense? Have you been watching the news lately? Oh, that's right. Okay, all right. So, all right. And then, are the sentences coherent? Are the arguments really good? These are just the first 2 things that our judges are looking at. Right now, I'd like to introduce our 4th contestant. Public schools should close for religious holidays.
America has always been a melting pot of rich cultures and religions. The reason I am proud to be an American is because of how diverse this country is. As communities like Fort Wayne go more diverse, school districts are addressing the question of whether to add more religious holidays or to strip them all out. As of now, religious students are pressured to choose faith or education. I believe all public schools in the United States should close for religious holidays because first, students wouldn't have to choose between faith and education. Next, learning happens outside the classroom as well. Finally, it allows for students to celebrate tradition. To begin with, some students are faced with the decision to attend school or to celebrate their religion. This school year, students who celebrate Muslim or Jewish holidays had to face the exact decision. Eid, Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur all fell on a day that we were scheduled to be in session. According to Shireen Jonas of a Baltimore school, she missed Eid, which means visiting a mosque, seeing old friends, and eating wonderful food, to take the PSAT, which means finding a testing location, seeing everyone you wouldn't want to, and wishing there was something to eat. The fact that the school even scheduled the PSAT on this day is very problematic. This one difficult decision could alter the future of your career or the relationship with your family and faith. Closing school during this time would relinquish students a day to celebrate their faith and a day for education. Secondly, learning happens outside your classroom as well, through real-world experiences and family traditions. Religion and tradition is passed on through generations to learn about their history and how important it is. These traditions give value to family and other people, which is a lesson not learned in a classroom. Also, religion brings people together. According to Dr. Levin Ellison of the Religion Health Connection, he stated that religious services and related activities tend to bring together persons with common faith commitments. Religious traditions like Rosh Hashanah begin with self-examination, where it is essential to examine our speech, what we say to and about others. Now, an opposing viewpoint may be that there are enough available days on our calendar to fit additional holidays. However, in our state alone, we have 180 days to create a school schedule as we see fit. There are several days where big religious holidays could easily be squeezed into our year without losing the required days. Lastly, religious holidays are a tradition. Religion is an important element of culture. Maintaining your culture and identity is important. Keeping traditions alive is necessary for teaching the next generation about a particular or shared past. For students, this is very significant to positive emotional development. These students are given a sense of security and continuity from one year to the next. For example, some of the local Asian community have avoided this by not celebrating the Lunar New Year at all if it falls on a school day. However, this ruins the continuity of tradition and the fun of learning about culture Truthfully, they should not have to choose and give up one for another. In conclusion, I believe all public schools in the United States should close for religious holidays. First, many students are left with an arduous decision that could affect their lives. Next, learning happens outside your classroom as well. And finally, religious holidays are a tradition. Closing schools for religious holidays isn't a new concept. For example, Christmas is already acknowledged in most public schools across our country. More recently, New York City public schools have added Muslim and Jewish holidays to their calendar since 2015. Hopefully soon, districts everywhere will recognize the lesser known but just as important religious holidays that many students have to miss school for. We live in America because we want the freedoms that so few others have. It's time to respect the religious freedoms for all and not just a few. Thank you.
We've talked a little about the students' commitment to the process. Now let's talk about the teachers. If you're wondering who the teachers are in the audience, if you were sitting where I am, you would know. Because when their students get up here to speak, they're mouthing the words along with them. So let's talk about perseverance. The teachers introduced students to websites which presented ideas about possible topics. Teachers had to say okay to a topic that they thought was doable and interesting. And they asked students to rethink topics that were questionable or inappropriate for this contest. I remember students who wanted to talk on, should teachers be paid for doing their jobs? I didn't think that was inappropriate or appropriate. Or, should students have to attend high school if they don't want to? I remember sitting alongside a student and asking, really? So teachers lovingly have to redirect many students in this area of topics. Once a topic has been selected, the research begins. Students must find current articles about their topics and hopefully defend their positions and support them. Also, the articles must be credible. We tell them, stay away from Wikipedia and newspapers found in grocery stores which cite evidences of Martian landings in the cornfields of Chesterton and the birth of babies with 4 heads. Teachers are always asking students during this process, is this a credible source? Tell me why or why not. Right now, as we talk about credible sources, we will go to our next contestant. And the next contestant will speak to us on, make sure I have it, censorship of social media.
Social media, the hobby that took over the world. I look around this room and I can say with certainty that most of you have used Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, or something of the such today. To be honest, I wouldn't doubt that you're on it right now. Even the few of you who try to shy away from it are very aware of its cultural influence. Look around. It's everywhere in today's society. The power of social media has connected people from almost every continent, swayed elections, and fueled almost every recent political movement. Everybody has a way to give their opinion and ways to find people with like minds. Or that was the point. What we should and shouldn't be allowed to say has always been on people's minds since the beginning of time. And now that we're in the information age, more than ever. With something as influential as social media, of course it's going to be plagued by large organizations and politically charged individuals trying to make their message the only one that gets through. This readily growing threat could kill the social media that we know today. Now, I'm not saying social media is some sort of totalitarian wasteland, not in the US at least. But the path we are barreling down is a dangerous one. There's an obvious bias when it comes to what we can and cannot say. The term PC, or political correctness, is a left-wing idea describing censoring information that could be viewed as offensive, insensitive, or just generally not child-friendly. The entire idea was meant for good, and in all respects, it has been. Now the idea of PC is being used to spread the SJW agenda. It is being used as a way to censor and regulate things that they do not agree with. Anything from Reddit to Instagram are homes to many views and are all getting skewed censorship. While I'd love to discuss all these topics, I'll save you the 2-hour-long speech and I'll just discuss the two most notable examples. March 24th, a Wall Street Journal article written by Jack Nickus details how ads were being shown on politically incorrect videos. He displayed images of Coke and Chevy ads, videos containing offensive humor. SJWs, the biggest activists for PC culture, were outraged. Advertisers trying to save face put a boycott on YouTube. YouTube would be gone without ads, so they quickly gave them a tool that allows them to decide what content does and what does not get their ads. Of course, they're going to pick the safest content to avoid outlash. This was detrimental to the majority of content creators. Even cursing turns videos with an average payout of $400 to $500 to $2 if you're lucky. That's like me giving you your paycheck with a 99.6% decrease on it. Even YouTube's biggest channel, PewDiePie, was hit hard. To a lot of content creators, this censorship meant they lost their entire source of income. Another huge platform that is getting abused by bias is Twitter. In February of 2016, Twitter announced the Twitter Safety Council. This council has the ability to ban any account and delete any tweet at their discretion. The Safety Council is there to promote confidence in expressing yourself freely. Yet, it seems all they've done is to squash free speech. Many notable PC activists appear on this board, yet no right-aligned free speechers are there. At the end of the day, this really wouldn't be a big deal if it wasn't for the fact that conservative tweets are disappearing without further comment. Even tweets supporting Trump during his road to presidency were getting taken down with no way to get them back. Twitter is now considering stopping people from even searching for certain hashtags. Whether you agree with the opinions or not, this Kafkaesque threat is definitely not supporting free speech. It is another tragedy that, as influential as Twitter is, that is starting to become an Orwellian thought crime because you don't agree with their mindset. If you don't think my 1984 and Kafka references are a bit cliche, you'd be right, but come on. One of the members of the council is an organization called the Dangerous Speech Project with the tagline, "Sometimes some speech isn't free." So, you might be asking, should we just never have freedom of speech? No, I actually love the idea of having safe spaces, and I believe that the left should have their freedom of speech. But for the fact that they're getting rid of our forms of social media and converting it to their points of view is wrong. If they were really trying to promote safety, as they said they were, I'd be all for it. But it's the fact that the safety that they are promoting is just malicious silencing. Social media does need to be tamed. Large amounts of doxing, threats, and vile defamation is spread on both sides. So what do I recommend? The solution to this threat is to force their hand to the popular services like Twitter or YouTube, and to add right-leaning free speech organizations and to keep censorship in check. I also urge that we hold the people involved accountable and to promote more forms of transparency with what they do. More and more, people are learning of this issue and are fighting against it. Organizations for free speech notice increased forms of donations and support through people's Facebooks. More eyes are on this issue than ever, especially with Berkeley and Antifa. The solution to this growing threat. So, if Russia, Syria, North Korea teach us anything, it's that people's power comes from their freedom of speech. Social media gives us the most powerful freedom of speech. Censorship can't hurt us if we recognize what it is. If we call it out for what it is, what's it going to do? People from ages 8 to 80, they tune into these social media sources. So why should one walk of life tell us what we can and cannot see? I urge you to fight for your freedoms. Make sure that whatever is going on is not affecting your ability to express yourself. Thank you.
So I have this vivacious and intelligent, lovely partner at the district level whose name is Rebecca Elder. And I was asking her about her speech habits, because she just so effortlessly flows when she's having conversations with people. And I said to her, gosh, Rebecca, I'm really, it's difficult for me to do small talk. I'm really not advanced in that area. And so she started to giggle and then told me about her time at Miami Middle School. And this is the story that she said I could tell. She said it was 8th grade, and she was in Mrs. Reynolds' 8th grade English class, or language arts class. And it was time to write the persuasive speech. Rebecca said she wrote the persuasive speech because she really believed in it. It was something about why we should stop trafficking in ivory because we wanted to save the animals. Seems perfectly good for 8th grade. She said she got up the first time and she got through maybe 3 words, stated 3 words, when she started to cry and ran from the room, and when anyone found her, there she was in the restroom just sobbing her eyes out. Well, you can imagine what the kids in the classroom were doing. And so her teacher, being encouraging like all of us are, you can do it, you really can do it, Rebecca, told her to try it a second time the next day. So the next day, Rebecca got up, and this time, after she'd been speaking for about 30 seconds, the teacher stopped her. And Rebecca said she could feel like these red splotches just coming out all over her body. And so the nurse decided that she had something called stress-induced hives as a result of trying to give this persuasive speech. So once again, you know how teachers are. The teacher said, you can do it, Rebecca, you can do it. We're going to give you a third time, a third opportunity to do this. And so the third time, the teacher said, I'm going to give you some advice. First of all, don't look in the eyeballs of the people in front of you. Look over the heads of your friends. And so Rebecca said, got it. She said, and Rebecca, when you're up at the podium, just kind of like, swing just a little bit, hold your hand on either side, and you'll get through it. She said, and Rebecca, just think, these are people, these are your peers, they're okay with you. So Rebecca got up that third day. She was going to do it. She was going to earn that A in this persuasive speech. Rebecca got up and started swinging from side to side with the lectern. And before she knew it, she had picked it up and thrown it against the cinder wall of Miami School. Friends still, when they see her at different places around the city, still remind her of that wonderful speech. She never gave it, except for about the first paragraph, but they do remember that incident. With that, we need once again to congratulate these brave young people. Next, we will hear the arts education's cornerstone.
I play the violin. I live my daydreams in music. I see my life in terms of music. If I were not a physicist, I would probably be a musician. Albert Einstein. To my understanding, visual, dramatic, and musical arts improve interpersonal skills necessary for community and enhance skills essential to high achievement. Therefore, no matter the necessary budget cuts, these classes remain indispensable for our futures. In reference to improving society, Barbara Prey, a Fulbright scholar and member of the advisory body for the National Endowment for the Arts, states, "Exposure to and understanding of the arts is key to developing qualities of responsible citizenship." In other words, the arts not only give us historical, scientific, mathematical, and literary knowledge, but they teach us to respect ourselves and accept others around us. For example, we have all likely heard that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So when the only thing people see in me and judge me purely based off of is my hijab, in the past, this would make me feel sad and little. But now, I recognize that beauty comes from a sense of nobility that only the arts can teach. My hijab was crafted, and as was I, whether on a sewing machine and adorned with jewels, or from your mother's womb to home and school. We are all artistically stitched together to be who we are, unique, important, and even flawed. In addition to encouraging acceptance and responsibility, the arts also improve learning across multiple curriculums through increased attendance and diversity in presentation. The President's Committee of the Arts found students involved in some form of art class were 3 times more likely to attend and 4 times more likely to have high academic achievement. Clearly, students need to attend in order to succeed, and the arts provide interest key to a variety of different learning styles. Dr. Henry L. Roediger, former editor for a psychological journal, notes, "Music provides structure, key to unlocking information stored in the brain. For example, cities' names often change without global notice, but I, and I think you will too, will forever remember that Istanbul was Constantinople." In another study, Judith Phillips, a Stennis research associate, tracked over 5,000 students, some involved in a standard classroom and others in a program using art to promote high-quality education. She found the students scoring proficient or above on standardized English and science tests was significantly higher at schools participating in the whole school initiative. Through the arts, students start thinking critically and creatively. In fact, a 2013 Michigan State study found that students involved in early childhood participation in the arts leads to innovation, patents, and increases the odds of starting a business. We need the arts, and especially the priceless, professional experts teaching us directly and collaborating with us on other courses involved in high-stakes testing. Many school systems have infamously cut the arts because they can be expensive to keep and maintain. But my school system, Fort Wayne Community Schools, have instead found other ways to promote high-quality education by keeping the arts, through energy conservation, for instance. For me, I have learned that my hijab is art, my eyes, art, my voice, music, and my movement, dance. And if I were not a product of art education, I would not be me. Fatima El Shaybani.
Thank you. So we talked about all these wonderful teachers who have helped from the very beginning of this process. Teachers who've probably eaten too much ice cream or drank too much coffee and said some words that are unutterable in public during this process. So I want you to stand, please. If you are a speech teacher, language arts teacher who's helped with these speeches today, will you please stand and be recognized? Thank you so much. And then there's another group of individuals that we want to introduce today also. And these are the wonderful principals, the ones who make sure that everything is going right in those classrooms. So let's do a roll call. Mr. Austin Couch from Northwood, Mr. Matt Schiebel from Shawnee, Mr. Jeff King from Jefferson, Mrs. Carol Froning from Blackhawk, Mr. Mark Bailey from Lane, Mr. Adam Swinford from Miami, Mrs. Maureen Sullivan, interim principal, Kikiyanga, Mr. Alan Jones, Lakeside, Mr. Brad Crozier, Memorial Park. We won't talk about your age. Okay. And Mr. Tim Captain from Tolls. Let's give those principals a wonderful hand, please. I see that our judges are ready, and so we'll continue. As our next contestant, on your programs you have, "Are police too quick to pull the trigger?" That has been changed. Instead, the topic is universal health care.
In Flint, Michigan, a single mom is living with her 4-year-old daughter. One night, her daughter comes down with a dangerously high fever. As any mom would do, her daughter rushes her to the hospital, and when she gets there, the doctors tell her that they might need to give her some medications and possibly an operation to bring her fever down. So the mom calls her healthcare provider. When she calls them, they tell her that they won't pay for the medications and the operation because that hotel is not in their network. They tell her that they will only pay for them if she brings her to a hospital in their network. So the mom gets in the car with her daughter and tries to bring her to that hospital. En route to that hospital, her daughter has a seizure and dies. So as I was doing my research and looking at more stories like these, I realized that a lot of healthcare companies only care about money when they should be caring about helping people. Healthcare is the maintenance of physical or mental health through a provision of medical services. The difference between regular healthcare and universal healthcare is universal healthcare provides for all citizens regardless of status. On the flip side, a lot of people think we shouldn't have universal healthcare because it would be paid for with taxes. This is partly true, but in reality, it would only be the top 1% of our country paying for these taxes. As Dr. Julio Frank from Harvard said, healthcare is not a commodity or privilege, but a human right. The first reason I think we should have universal healthcare is it's a human rights issue. In some situations, it's essential to maintain a person's life. If people can't afford it, they don't go looking for it. The second reason I think we should have universal healthcare is it would cut healthcare spending. The U.S. spends more than any UN nation on healthcare. We spend a greater percentage of our budget than Canada, Germany, France, or Japan. A one-payer system would cut down on spending. Also, paperwork would reduce, which would make our environment more friendly. The third reason I think we should have universal health care is because it would encourage people to go for proper health care when they need it. If people can't afford it, or they're going into a situation knowing that they're going to be spending more money than they have, then they don't go looking for the help they need. If we had a free option for those people who can't afford it, then it would treat diseases and symptoms sooner than later. In Canada, there's a golfer who's coming down to the United States for a golfing tournament. While he's here, the muscle in his arm rips all the way back into his chest. He goes to a hospital in the United States. In the United States, an operation would cost $25,000 to fix this, not including his hospital stay and the medications he would need after that surgery. Back in Canada, the operation would cost $0 out of pay pocket, $0 for the hospital stay, and only about $10 to $20 for the medications he would need. So these are the reasons I think we should have universal health care. It's a human rights issue, it would cut down on spending, and it would encourage people to seek preventative care. If my story at the beginning or the end connected to you in any way, you would want universal health care too. I think healthcare companies should focus on helping people and saving lives and not on money. Thank you.
We've honored the teachers, we've honored the principals, and now there's a group of people here who definitely are not the least of all the honorees. And those would be the parents. You've had to live with them. God love you. So if you're a parent of a student who was here in this contest, will you please stand up and be honored today? Thank you for all of your hard work and dedication to them, and believe me, they get better as they grow older. So middle school is its own special time, but I tell you, after it passes, and we're glad it does, okay? All right, so the next thing that we have is our topic is, should violent video games be banned?
Did you know that 97% of people from children to adolescents and even adults play video games for at least 1 to 2 hours per day? Violent video games make people more intelligent, they decrease stress levels, and they are not the cause of real-life violence. First, they become more intelligent. People that play these games are able to think more clearly, and they understand more, and they have more mental ability. What this means is that they are able to succeed more by doing a lot more things, and they can learn about much more by playing these games. Labu, who is a psychologist, stated that these games are dramatically changing. They're becoming more complex, more diverse, and they're becoming more natural in nature. Next, they're lower stress levels. Now, only guys in particular thought that this decreased lower stress levels, as girls found most of these games very unpleasant to play or even watch. Ryan, who is an author, did a study that showed that girls found them very unpleasant and actually could increase their stress levels, but did the same study for men, and it didn't have either didn't have any change at all or decreased their stress. And these games are these games are fun when you play them, and you don't have to worry about anything stressful from school or the day, and you can just have fun while playing these games. Finally, these games do not cause real-life violence. The FBI did a study from 1990 to 2008 that showed that violent video game prices have gone up, as well as the amount of these games have been bought, but violence has gone down. And many people blame that these games are causing real-life violence when it could be the parents themselves, especially for children and adolescents. Adults have to buy these games as they have a mature rating for 18 and up. So the parent has to go into the store and buy the game themselves for their child to play. That can be an easy solution to have the problem of real-life violence solved, as many people think that children and adolescents are cursing more because of these games, but can easily be solved by parents. And according to GMA, once the brain experiences things, it generates ideas but does not make evil or harmful ideas. In conclusion, violent video games should not be banned, and they make people more intelligent, they decrease stress levels, and they are not the cause of real-life violence.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So what happens after the speech contest with these wonderful students? Well, you know that only one person's going to come out as the champion. But really, all of them are champions. But Mrs. Tara Kristen and I will take it upon ourselves to make sure that these names are forwarded to high school speech teachers, because these are the students who definitely need to be on the speech and debate teams. We want these students to have the thrill of boarding the school bus at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning, traveling to a tournament in Indy or some other place, maybe perhaps not even in town, then returning to the school parking lot around 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. The longest speech tournament that my daughter ever participated in was a state speech tournament in Indianapolis. It began at 7:30 in the morning with enrollment, and we were out at 11:59 that evening. That was a lot of fun, so we want all of our students here to have that fun. Now, the other reason why it's so important is that we know, the research shows, and we have articles that tell, that when college admissions officers are looking at that resume from high school, if they see speech on it, they have a higher opinion of that student. Now, it may or may not be true, but that's okay. They do have a higher opinion because they know that these students have been disciplined. The speech, if you can believe this or not, it's true. The actual speech day or speech meets begin in September of each year and conclude in June. That's a tougher season than football or basketball or track or whatever. So these students are highly favored when it comes to college admissions and get those additional points. So we're going to forward their names on, and we know that they're going to have a good time on those speech teams. Right now we're going to hear from our next contestant who will speak to us on, is the wall the solution?
Hope you all are having a wonderful day. Today I will be talking about a topic that is well known. I'm pretty sure you guys have heard it all over the news and social media and have discussed it with some friends and family members. Should this wall be built? Separating us from Mexico? Is that really a logical thing to do? Today I am here to convince you that the wall is not the right solution. You probably think of me as a kid who bases my opinion off of what I hear. Well, not today. One reason why I believe the wall is not the right solution is because a lot of money is involved when building something like this. According to Senate Leader Mitch McConnell, it'll cost around $12 to $15 billion. Shouldn't that money be used for something else? It can be donated to send life-saving aid to Syrian refugees and other families in crisis. Another reason why this wall should not be built is because it'll disrupt some of the wildlife migration patterns. If the wall is built, it'll be an environmental catastrophe. Wildlife has been using this natural corridor for millions of years. Think of all the different species and creatures that has been using this wall for natural resources, reproduction, and seasonality. The barrier, aka the wall, will disrupt migrations of species from jaguars to hawks and hummingbirds. Although you might not think it'll affect animals that can fly, think again. Some of these birds and bats stay low to the ground while flying because most of their food, such as plants and vegetation, are grown from the ground. According to Jeff Corwin, who's a wildlife biologist and a nature conservationist, there are nearly 90 endangered and threatened species, some of which could be pushed off to extinction because of this proposed wall. Although that may be true, I can see why people want this wall to be built. To stop illegal immigrants from coming in the improper way, but instead coming in the correct way, then becoming a US citizen. Not only may it decrease undocumented immigrants, but it could also impede terrorists from coming in. However, there's more than one way to come into the United States. Remember September 11th, 2001? The terrorists did not cross the border of Mexico to come here, meaning the wall may be indeed useless. If the wall is built, it may tempt more people into coming into the US illegally as seeing the wall as a challenge to accomplish. Isn't that the opposite of what we want? More illegal immigrants? In conclusion, the wall cannot stop mankind from coming in, unless if we barricade ourselves from the world. Humans are like rivers. If an obstacle comes their way, they'll find another way around it, no matter how long it takes. So, if the wall is built, do you really think it will make a difference? A quote from Mexico's President Enrique Peña Nieto. Mexico does not want to build walls, but instead build bridges. Thank you.
Thank you. So do we ever hear from speech students again after they're grown up? Yes, we do. Kobe Libby, Snyder graduate. If you've ever watched Madam Secretary, you've seen him. He plays the cyber czar on that program. Also recently, he was given a special position on the television series Doubt. Unfortunately, it only lasted for 2 programs, but anyway, we will see Kobe again. He's out there doing it. What about Heather Headley? She got the starring role as Nala in The Lion King. She was also had the starring role in The Bodyguard, the musical, and The Color Purple. In fact, last summer, she played the role of Shug in The Color Purple on Broadway. What about Ian Belknap, who is now the Associate Artistic Director of his own company in New York? I love this because recently, the program that he directs, or play that he now directs, Malcolm X, was just honored by the Critics' Choice. What about Jeanette Liu, who has her own daily television program in Toronto? Or Conja Ridley, who everyone knows in Fort Wayne, is a wonderful storyteller. How about Dr. Wendy Robinson? 30 years ago when I arrived in Fort Wayne, I met Dr. Patty Martone. And she asked me on one Friday if she could take me on a tour of Northside. I was delighted. Okay, whatever. But she said, I want to do it on Saturday when there's no one in the building because I want to show you why I love this place. So as we're going on that remarkable tour on that Saturday morning, she told me, she said, when Wendy was in high school, she said, I knew that she had talent in public speaking, but she didn't. She said, so I made sure that I pushed her. So I made sure that I put her in a speech contest sponsored by the Daughters of the American Revolution. She said, I knew it was not going to be a comfortable position for her, but I knew that she would have to face audiences like this who didn't think she was as wonderful as I thought. She said, right before Wendy went into the room, I told her, Wendy, you go in there and you act like you own the place. And hasn't she been doing that since that time? She acts like she owns the place. So there is life for all of these students who would decide to have a career in speech. With that, we're on to our last speaker, against animal testing.
So my fellow peers and judges, close your eyes and imagine this. You're outside, feeling the warmth of the sun, just gently kissing your skin. You look around and everything's bright and peaceful. That is until one day you wake up, caged, see nothing but darkness, hearing the screams of your fellow species. This is a feeling that poor animals who are being experimented on feel every single day of their lives. Why, you might ask? Simple. The answer is to keep humans alive while other species die every day. I think experimenting on animals for scientific and medical research purposes is wrong because it's inhumane and cruel. Now let me explain why. If you dig deeper into this, you'll find that experimenting on animals is just basic cruelty. Humans can be more cruel than you think, as said by authors George Wright and Steve Hoagland, who wrote an online article on the public database EBSCOhost, says, there are many examples of humans taking advantage of their abilities to dominate other species, capturing them, holding them in tiny cages, even subjecting them to artificial whiplash, just to see what happens. Why must we use animals to experiment on when we ourselves can't use the courage to ask humans to be part of an experiment? It just doesn't make sense. Also, even though many people know that these animals are being subjected to do things against their will, we're still not doing anything about it. Are we just going to continue to ignore this problem till these poor animals go into extinction? About 50 to 100 million die due to experiments each year. Author Becca Delzer, who quotes the Massachusetts Coalition for Animal Rights, describes what often occurs to bunnies who are being experimented on. No pain relievers or anesthetics of any kind are being used. The extreme pain often causes them to break their own backs, dying in agony needlessly. Like I've stated, plain cruelty. The human body is so complex, filled with many complicated tissues, arteries, organs, etc. So how can we experiment on animals if their systems can't even compare to our system? As said by Helen Marston, who also wrote an article on the online public database EBSCOhost, says, using another species is using the wrong system. Considering the differences that occur on the metabolic, genetic, and molecular levels, when applied to an entire biological system, those intricate differences become exponential, which means that with every little change becomes a major difference when comparing both systems together. Saying this, can we continue to experiment on animals knowing this knowledge? No, we can't. So this means we can use alternatives. The main alternative for replacing animal testing is technology. As a counter-argument, using Lori Pycroft as an example, who also wrote an article on the online public database says, without access to live organisms, we will know far less about the cardiovascular system. What she's saying is that without experimenting on animals, we wouldn't know the things we know today, which is illogical because we could easily use replacements. And I respect her viewpoints, but I highly disagree with them. In conclusion, I feel that experimenting on animals is inhumane and cruel. We need to put a stop to this before more and more animal deaths increase. Even though people may say that animals are the best way to find the cure, there are more humane ways to do this. Remember, species like guinea pigs, rabbits, mice, even cats and dogs are dying every year due to experimentation. We need to put a stop to this before it's too late. Thank you.
Let's give all of our contestants another hand, please. No one ran out of the room, no one threw up, no one, right? Congratulations to each of you. You've been such a wonderful audience, and so now we're going to ask you if you will just go right across the hallway and have some refreshments while our judges are determining who our winners will be today. Thank you. We're going to get to the reason why we're here. First of all, I want to say again to each of the contestants, you were superb. You just were. And we are going to refer your names to the high school speech coaches, and they will get in contact with you. So this is how we're going to do it. Since everyone's a finalist, I'm going to begin with those students who are finalists, okay? And then after that, I will skip, if I happen to skip your name, it is because you're not a finalist, you have another plaque. But every student will leave here with a plaque in their hands. So let's begin, please. From Blackhawk Middle School, we have Aiden Reinders, Principal Carol Froning, and Speech Coach Sally Godfrey. Would you come up, please? Where are the cameras? Okay. From Jefferson Middle School, we have Haley Nelson, Principal Jeff King, Speech Coach Julie Goodman. From Shawnee Middle School, we have Jacob Cummins. The title of the speech, Censorship of Social Media, Principal Matt Schiebel, Speech Coach Catherine Pierce. From Tolles Montessori School, Caitlin Dostal. Speech title, Universal Healthcare. Principal, Tim Captain. Speech coach, Amy Nagel. From Lane Middle School, we have Ethan Ferry. Should violent video games be banned? Principal, Mark Bailey. Speech coach, Kelly Bordner. From Lakeside Middle School, we have P.O. Hey, was that pretty good? What's the real way? P.O. Say it, honey.
Pio.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Principal Alan Jones, speech coach Diane Phillips. From Miami Middle School. Okay, come on, no way. Tell us your name.
No way he's lying.
Thank you. Speech title, Against Animal Testing, Principal Adam Swinford, and speech coach Mark Truesdell, who was on the edge of his seat all the time. And now, our second runner-up. Drum roll. Thank you. From Northwood Middle School, we have Bloyson Laui. I know him well. Principal Austin Couch and speech coach Denise Oakes. Drum roll again for first runner-up from Kikianga Middle School. Fatima, where's Fatima? Tell us your name.
Fatima El Shaybani.
Exactly. I love that name. The Arts Education's Cornerstone, Principal Maureen Sullivan, and speech coach Karen Cook. And finally, the person who will take home the Betty Stein plaque for excellence in speech, our first place winner today. From Memorial Park Middle School, Tyler Hunter, Waterboarding. Principal Brad Crozier, speech coach Gina Ryan. I'd like all of you to stand and let's give them one more applause, please. Parents, take them out to dinner at Cork and Cleaver or someplace wonderful. They've earned it. They deserve it. Let's celebrate. Tara?
How about a big round of applause for Miss Cookie Rutledge? She did an excellent job first year. Thank you. Don't leave yet. Thank you again to our judges back there for LTV and for Grile Cafeteria for providing cookies and punch. Thank you, everyone. The Lions Club does want to hold another luncheon next week, so speech coaches, I will send that information to you. Thank you again for everyone who attended. Have a great night.